Hi, I'm David.
Hi, I'm Jelena.
Welcome to our tutorial on the pelvic tilt in downward facing dog. So this is kind of a very focused tutorial. We're assuming already that you know what downward dog is. We got lots of tutorials on those too. We'll put one up here if you need to go back and see how to do downward dog. But we're going to look at a particular alignment cue that is part of Ashtanga yoga's tradition, but we get a lot of questions about it.
And I find this cue is very important. It changes the way downward dog feels. And because of it, it becomes almost a nice place to rest and catch your breath if you need to.
But before we go any further, we need to ask you, you can tell us, have you subscribed?
Why do you have to prolong it?
I create a little bit of tension.
It's not tension. Everyone knows what's coming.
Okay. All right. Well, subscribe, like, comment if you want to see something in particular, or if you just love this video. If you don't love it, you don't have to comment. It's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm cutting you off.
Okay.
Okay. Downward dog. Pelvic tilts.
Downward facing dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana.
Okay.
Yeah. So traditionally, and we're talking about how we've been taught in Mysore, India. I've been going there for what?
Many
20
years.
Yeah, 23 years, 24 years. We're given conditions for the posture. You know, like we're told where to put our feet, where to put our hands, where to look. That kind of defines the shape of the pose we're doing. And so we have this pose that shows up in sun salutations and in all of our vinyasa. Really, they call it the sixth position, Shat.
Sixth vinyasa, yeah.
It doesn't have its own name, but it's very specific to this practice. So if you were to go to another place and practice there, say you went to Pune and you were practicing at the Iyengar Yoga Institute, or you go, I don't know, Shivananda. Do they do downward facing dog?
I don't know.
I don't think they do. But anyway, you know, if you go to another place, then they might have their own conditions for that posture. That posture will kind of look the same, you know, it'll be that triangle shape probably, but they might have an entirely different cue for where to look or how far the feet should be apart and things like that. And all these different traditions have their own way of doing the postures. So there's no universal correct form.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that really bothers some people, and I'm sorry, but it's not my fault. It's not my fault. So if you are doing a vinyasa style class, you know, not Ashtanga, but an offshoot, because that's what vinyasa classes are. They're offshoots of Ashtanga. Then you might get totally different cues because they're not in that tradition, in our tradition. That's where we get the differences. So the one that we're teaching is the one that's taught in Mysore, India.
I think you've proven
Have I
your point.
over-explained it?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
No, I don't think so. I think you know that. And so it's basic for you. But a lot of what I read, people don't understand that. And so here, we're going to put up a picture of Pattabhi Jois. And Pattabhi Jois was our teacher's grandfather, and he's a famous teacher in Ashtanga Yoga. If you don't know, he's gone now, passed away. But this picture is from way back in, I don't know, when the picture was taken in the late 50s.
Something like that.
If it's from when his book was written. Look at the shape in the lower back. Do you see how the lower back is rounded? And the tailbone would be pulling down towards the heels. Okay, this is different than the cue of lift your sits bones or a tailbone up. Okay, so there's a very different shape. And it's not just Pattabhi Jois doing it. So that was maybe, 60 whatever years ago. Here's a picture of our teacher, Sharat Jois, doing the same posture. And again, look at his back. Okay, so that similar rounded shape. All right, so we're going to say that that is a little bit of flexion, like roundness in the lower back, and that's being caused by the hips being pulled down into a posterior tilt instead of an anterior tilt. An anterior tilt is this. When your hip bones tip forward, and the front of the pelvis drops down, and the sits bones lift up. A posterior tilt is when the sits bones draw down, the hip bones pulled back, and that creates a flattening in the back. So the anterior tilt creates an arch. Maybe move your hands here like that. The posterior tilt creates either a flatness, or if you're going to do a deeper forward bend, then a roundness. Okay? All right. So you want to do downward facing dog? Okay, so we've got Jelena in the downward facing dog, and this is the shape that we're going to look for in Ashtanga, where the sits bones are going to drop down. So the sits bones are here. Jelena's going to activate the hamstrings and push the thighs back, and then she's pulling up through the lower belly and creating this lift here and this little curve here. Can you see that? Okay, and then watch what happens if Jelena goes into an anterior tilt. So the sits bones are lifting and the back goes into more extension. It's like a little bit of a back bend there. Can you see it? Okay, so the Ashtanga version, sits bones down, and that little bit of flexion, roundness in the lower back. It's not crazy, but a little bit. And also, we drop the head, the chin down towards the chest, because our drishti, our gazing point, is towards the navel, nabu drishti. And that's also going to lend to that same shape in the lower back. Okay. Okay, so we can tell you that that is absolutely the way that it's taught in Mysore, India, but we can only really guess why. You know what I mean? The cues that we're given by tradition and things, they're not really explained in a way that tells you like why they've been chosen that way. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's part of kind of being a student and surrendering yourself, that you can question these things, and you can, and it's good to question and think about that, but ultimately you still do it, even if you have doubt, even if you don't necessarily align with it, because the idea is that the rules should come from outside of you. For it to be a mindfulness practice, you can't pick and choose what you like and don't like and then practice that. So we, question and wonder about it, but for this reason, we can give you answers, but those answers are also just our very own
They're created.
guesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have our own explanations, and we'll tell you what those are. And those explanations are based, they're not just kind of wild conjecture. They're based on what that cue creates, the feeling that it creates in our body, and then how we notice that sort of effect in the practice, right?
So one of the things, by tucking our sits bones down or pulling our tailbone under, it brings the awareness to our core. And so we keep coming back to our core, which is really our pelvic floor. And we notice that when we engage there, there's, again, you heard me say this if you watched our videos before, I say it all the time, by activating and coming back to the core, we connect our upper body and lower body together. So when we are holding something like downward facing dog, we don't feel like all the weight's being dumped into our arms or our hands, or all the weight is back in our heels, or we're feeling too much stretch in the back of our hamstring. But rather, there's this even sensation of work and stretch across the back line of the body.
Mm-hmm. And then you'll notice too that because you're connecting the legs to, the shoulders basically, by doing that posterior tilt, that's going to make a huge difference in the jumping actions and things like that. Because you'll start to be able to access your upper body strength and control where your legs go. And we've actually talked about that, about jumping forward and jumping back in the Surya Namaskar, and how that tilt plays into that. So we'll link to that here, okay? And we'll just finish up by showing it again. And I want to mention one thing that you need to look out for, okay? So again, we'll go into our downward facing dog with the feet about hip width apart, hands are a little wider than the shoulders. And Jelena is going to come into the posterior tilt by drawing the sits bones down, and she gets that roundness here in the lower back and that lift through the lower belly. And it's good to note that that's also going to shift the weight back a little bit. So if Jelena is lifting through the sits bones, she's going to probably feel like the weight is dropping down towards the floor through the chest. Maybe the hands get a little heavier. When she tucks, it pulls weight down towards the heels, and you're going to feel a lot of engagement in the front of the body. Just make sure that when you do this posterior tilt, that you don't also round your upper back as well. This isn't what we're looking for, right? We're not trying to get a big curve through the entire spine. We really just want the flexion to happen here in the lower belly. And then we want to try to keep this in a fairly neutral line. So the rest of the back beyond, the sort of the lowest part, the lumbar, is still being extended, okay? So tuck your tailbone, pull your lower belly in, and then really reach from your shoulders at the same time. That's it, so that you get that length through the rest of the spine. Okay. Anything else to add?
No.
No?
I think that's plenty.
Yeah. Remember, Nabu Drishti, look towards your navel, but you don't have to see it, right? So it's okay to wear a shirt.
All right. Let us know if that was helpful, what else you would like to see, and make sure to follow.
Bye.
Bye.